The jungle was not a place for the poor. At least, that's what the villagers always whispered. They said the tres band too close together. The Venus moved like snakes. And Anyone foolish enough to wander inside never returned. Yet on that sweltering night, with nothing but hunger gnawing at his stomach and humiliation echoing in his heart, a penniless youth pressed forward into the darkness. Every step tracked deadly a face that sounded louder than thunder in the silence. His eyes darted from shadow to shadow, but it wasn't the animals that frightened him. It was the thought of returning to the village empty-handed, mocked once again for daring to dream beyond his place. Poverty, he had learned, was not just hunger. It was chains forget by the laughter of others. Then, without warning, the earth beneath him trembled. A strange glow bled through the undergrowth, pulsing like the heartbeat of some ancient beast. Drawn closer, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a chaffer mouth split wide open before him, jagged rocks sharpened like fangs. He tried to turn back, but the ground collapsed beneath his feet, and he was swallowed whole by light. Inside, the chaffer was no chaffer at all. It was a palace carved from skulls, each wall shimmering with iridescent green and gold. Serpents slithered silently across the ceiling, their eyes unblinking, their tongues flickering with menace. And on a throne of bones and jewels sat a figure that froze his blood, the Snake King, a towering presence with a human face stretched thin over reptilian eyes. The king's voice he said like steel dragged over stone. You, boo of dirt and shame, have stumbled into my kingdom. No one lay a face without a choice. You will take 100 brides, the finest beauty I command, or you will be crushed beneath my choice. The youth's breath choked. 100 women? It sounded like a reward, but the venom in the king's tone dripped with cruelty. Around him, figures began to appear, faces flawless, smiles empty, eyes gleaming with sorrow. 100 brides. His heart pounded. He had nothing, no family, no wealth, no escape. And yet, in that suffocating silence, a fire flickered within him. Because what he sallallahu alaihi wasallam next was something no human had life to tell before. He had not always been this close to death. In the village of tracked clay huts and parched soil, he had grown up invisibly. The boo no one believed would ever amount to anything. His clothes were always torn, his hands always shallow set from labor that never paid enough to feed him. When other children carried baskets of grain or returned from the fields with laughter, he carried only shame. Mockery was his daily bread. Low at him, the elder sneered, chasing dry alms he cannot afford. The richer youths taunted him with scraps of food, throwing them to the ground as though he were no more than a beggar dog. Poverty clung to him like a stitch on skin. And no matter how hard he tried, the village reminded him at every turn that he was destined to remain beneath their feet. But that night in the jungle, when the earth split open and the Snake King's palace revealed itself, the cruel voices of his past returned to haunt him. You are nothing. You will never rise. He realized then why the king had chosen him. The Snake Kingdom did not hunt the powerful. It preyed on the desperate, the forgotten, those who hungered so badly for a miracle that even poison could be disguised as salvation. The king's offer of 100 brides was not generosity, it was mockery. What could be more tempting to a man starved of dignity than beauty, wealth, and status beyond imagination? The promise dangled like ripe fruit before a starving child, sweet to the eye, rotten at the core. For the king knew, temptation was a thick shackleton chains. Whispers of this place had long haunted the village. Old women warned children never to stray into the jungle. Speaking of cursed men who vanished into the earth, they said the king lured them with promises, gold, power, endless desire, and none ever returned. Some claimed to have fine screams chariot on the wind during stormy nights. Others swore they had seen ghostly figures weeping by the river bank. Women with eyes like mirrors, calling for release. And now, he was inside the very heart of that legend. The youth stood trembling, the 100 brides circling him with perfect faces and lifeless smiles. Her beauty was suffocating, like a mask hiding the chai. He wanted to scream, to flee, to wake and find his nightmare gone. But deep inside, a sharper instinct rose. The sense that this was more than just a trap for him. This was a kingdom built on the bones of those who had fallen before him. each victim's desperation fading the snaking's arrogance. And yet, something flickered in his chest, a memory of hunger, of humiliation, of standing tall despite her laughter. If the king took desperation made him weak, he had underestimated what poverty had already taught him. The serpents he set, the palace walls glowed, and the king leaned forward, eyes burning. But what awaited him next, the story warns us, would shatter even the cruelest MYTHs. Long before the poor youth stumbled into his cavern, the Snake King had already woven his legend across countless generations. His throne was not built from stone but from the illusions of power. His kingdom not held together by loyalty but by fear. He was a creature of endless hunger. A serpent crowned in jewels, cloaked in the bodies of men and women he had ensnared. He called himself ruler of the unseen, master of desire. Yet in truth, he was nothing more than a tyrant whose weapons were deception and vanity. Where others used swords, he used promises. Where others built armies, he built illusions. Beauty, wealth, and power were his chains, and he wrapped them round the necks of the desperate until they could no longer breathe. The Snake King's palace was a theater of lies. Every scale that gleamed from the walls shimmered with stolen light. Every jewel that sparkled on his throne was torn from the hands of men who had amassed king riches but left only as bones. Even the breeders that circled him, faces flawless, eyes hollow, were not queens but prisoners. Each had only been lured into his grasp, transformed into eternal ornaments to showcase his dominion. Their smiles were painted masks, their laughter, rehearsed HOS. They were beauty stripped of freedom, paraded as trophies of his cruelty. Truth itself did not survive in his kingdom. The Snake King twisted it into whatever shape pleased him. He convinced men that submission was strength, that obedience was destiny, that dignity was a luxury reserved for those who served. To the weak, he offered illusions of greatness. To the proud, he promised eternal glory. But always, the cost was the same. Their soul bent into servitude, their vows silenced forever. The arrogance of the Snake King was legendary. He believed no one could resist his offers. To him, human will was fragile, like dry wood snapping under pressure. His laughter he set through the cavern halls whenever another victim surrendered, and each surrender confirmed his own invincibility. In his mind, he was untouchable, eternal, a god masquerading in serpentine skin. Yet arrogance is the seed of downfall, and within his greed lay his weakness. He had grown so confident in his illusions that he no longer recognized truth when it stood before him. He believed every man could be bowed, every woman could be broken, every soul could be bent. The concept of resistance was foreign to him, as unthinkable as water flowing uphill. His blindness fed his cruelty. For centuries, he crushed those who wavered, displaying their faces as warnings. He let the villagers whisper their ghost stories, knowing fear was the most effective guard. Why chain the jungle when rumor did work for him? The people stayed away, and those who dared to come were already awakened by their own ambition. It was a perfect system, or so he thought, because arrogance had led him to danger. In surrounding himself with illusions, the Snake King had forgotten the taste of truth. He could not recognize the quiet strength of one who had endured humiliation without breaking, or the dignity of one who had been mocked but still stood tall. His kingdom, magnificent as it seemed, was only a fragile mirage waiting for the right breath to shatter it. And now, before him, stood the who he believed would be his easiest conquest yet. A poor youth, despised by his village, starved of love, stripped of respect. The king's tongue flickered in satisfaction. This one, he thought, would bend quickly. But in that thought lay the first straw in his empire. For the Snake King embodied corruption, arrogance, greed, lust for power. Yet he had never faced so many who had nothing left to lose. And when such a soul refuses to bow, no illusion, no matter how dazzling, can hold its power for long. The palace walls he set with serpents. The breeders swayed like shadows. The king leaned forward, sure of victory. But his arrogance blinded him to the storm already brewing in the heart of the one he mocked. In a small corner of the world, far removed from the jeweled illusions of the Snake King's cavern. Abu grew up with nothing but the sky as his roof and the soil as his inheritance. His name was whispered in pity among the villagers, for he belonged to no proud family, owned no fields, and chariot no riches. His hands were shallow set before they were strong, his belly often empty before it was ever full. Hunger was his first teacher, humiliation his second, and betrayal his third. The children of the village mocked at him. They laughed at the holes in his clothes, at the rogue sandals barely holding together on his feet. Beggar son. There were sharpened stones. When he dared to reach for food at communal feasts, mothers pulled their children back as though poverty were a disease that might spread with a single touch. Even the neighbors who owned share bread with his parents turned cold, locking their doors, hoarding their grain, guarding their dignity as though his existential threatened to stain theirs. And yet, through the bitter winter of humiliation, one thing never froze: his dignity. His mother had taught him young. We may starve, my son, but we must never bow. Her words became the marrow in his bones. Even when mocked, he stood tall. Even when chatted, he did not stale. When villagers denied him work, he tilled barren soil with his bare hands, pulling weights as though pulling churches from the earth. His body bent under hunger, but his spirit never broke. Still, betrayal cut their pace. Onjo, when he was 12, a friend, one of the few who played with him, led him into the fields with promises of shared harvest. But it was a trick. The boy's father had ordered it. Lure him, accuse him, shame him. By nightfall, the poor youth was branded a thief, chased out from the fields, spat on by those who had unjust smiled at him. He carried the scar of that night not on his skin but in his heart. A wound that taught him the cruelty of envy and the weight of lies. But cruelty also taught him clarity. He learned that respect bought with wealth was fragile. That power seized through greed was fleeting. He knew there had to be another kind of strength. One not carved from gold, but from the courage to endure. There were nights he went to sleep with nothing but water in his stomach. Nights when he stared at the stars and asked why he was born into nothing. Yet even in those hours, when shadows whispered despair, he held to one truth. Poverty is not shame, cowardice is. And so he chose honesty when the cheat might have fed him. He chose purity when corruption beckoned. He chose silence over gossip, kindness over cruelty, work over begging. Though the world gave him little, he gave back what he could. Carrying water for the elderly, mending fences, helping children get their reward. Many still mocked him, but some, quietly, began to admire. Unseen to all, a different kind of power was being forget. Not the flashy power of crowns or gold, but the kind that grows only in struggle. Resilience, patience, unbreakable will. His body was lean, his hands rogue, but his gaze, clear and unwavering, burned with something no villager could extinguish. And this was his secret strength. When storms swept through the fields, tearing ropes from the homes of those who had mocked him, he was the first to help. When flood swallowed the roads, he carried children across on his back. When drought starved the village, he was the one who shared what little he had, even when it meant going hungry another night. Slowly, the same neighbors who had betrayed him began to whisper differently. Not, beggar son, but, buit Alai's heart. Yet admiration came late, and scars ran deep. He had grown used to solitude, to being an outcast. And though dignity sustained him, he still felt the ache of emptiness, a loneliness sharper than hunger, a longing for a place where his worth would not be measured in joints or titles. That longing drove him further than the paths others dared walk. Into forests forbidden, into jungles feared, he wandered, searching not for wealth, but for meaning. It was hunger that first led his feet astray. Yes. But it was something deeper that kept him walking into the unknown. A refusal to bow to despair, a need to profit that even the poorest life could carry greatness. And so, when the glowing chaff swallowed him, he did not scream. When the ground beneath him shifted into the kingdom of serpents, he did not fall to his knees. And when the Snake King he set his ultimatum, marry 100 women or be destroyed, he did not break as the tyrant expected. For this was not just a poor boy. This was the son of hunger, the child of humiliation, the heir to betrayal. His armor was not gold but honesty. His weapon was not steel but purity. His strength was not visible, but it was the kind that could topple illusions, expose lies, and bring even the proudest kingdom to its knees. And though he did not know it yet, every insult he had endured, every wound he had carried, had been preparing him for this very moment. The cavern shimmered with a thousand false treasures. Golden goblets poured jewels like water. Silk-clad maidens stood in rows with eyes as empty as jaggeds, and towering pillars glowed with a serpent-green light. From his throne, the Snake King leaned forward, forked tongue flicking with satisfaction. "Lord, you humble," the king he said, his voice heavy with echo. "You came from rags, from mud. Yet here I offer you everything your kind has never touched. Wealth without end, beauty without limit, power without question. 100 women at your feet, all yours if you only bow." The words were sharp, almost sweet in their temptation, and in the silence that followed, the boy heard another voice. No, many voices, echoing from memory, the jeers of his village, the mocking laughs of those who told him he would be poor and forgotten, the whispers of men who traded dignity for survival, women who sighed no one would ever want him. "Take it," their ghostly voices urged. "Take the gold, take the women, prove us wrong. Let him make you a king." The Snake King smiled, watching the flicker of conflict cross the boy's face. "Ah," he purred, "is it the hunger in your eyes? Do not deny it. You have starved your whole life, mocked and spat on. Here, you can face fresh. All it costs is your obedience." But the boy stood still, his shoulders squared, his gaze steady. "You mistake me," he sighed softly, but with words that cut through the cavern like a blade. "I do not hunger for what enslaves me." A ripple passed through the chamber. The maidens looked up for the first time, as if hearing something human pierced the haze of their enchantment. The Snake King's smile faltered, just for a moment, before curving back into a grin of mockery. "You dare insult my generosity?" The king spat, his scales flashing with anger. "You are nothing. You crawled into my kingdom like a worm, and I could crush you with a breath. Do you think your words have weight here?" The boy did not flinch. "I think truth has weight everywhere, and I think it terrifies you." The air itself seemed to shift. The torches burned brighter, shadows danced violently, and the king rose from his throne, towering with coils that stretched endlessly, his eyes blazing with venomous light. "Truth," he thundered. "Truth is what I say it is. These women belong to me. This kingdom bends to me. Even you, what? Stand here because I allow it." Still the boy did not bend. He stood in the midst of glittering illusions, in the face of promised pleasures and thundering rage, and he was as calm as still water. "No," he answered, his voice low but unshaken. "I stand because I chose not to kneel." The words echoed, not only in the cavern, but in the minds of those watching, the maidens, the unseen spirits of men who had been swallowed before. Even the very walls seemed to tremble at defiance spoken aloud. A Snake King style lashed, cracking the ground with thunder. His arrogance had never been challenged, his wealth never refused, his beauty never denied. For the first time, his composure cracked, his turned shrill, his laughter hollow. "You will regret this," he snarled, his voice quivering between fury and disbelief. "No man resists me and lives." But the boy's charm only deepened, and that charm was a mirror in which the king sallallahu alaihi wasallam his own weakness. The arrogance that had been his crown now wagged like a curse. The illusions he talked unbreakable flickered under the gaze of a poor youth who owned nothing, but could not be bought. The confrontation was no longer about gold or breeches. It was about power, a tyrant who demanded obedience, and Abu who refused to surrender his soul. And in that moment, for the first time in his reign, the Snake King was rattled. But the test of words, the narrator's false whispers, was only the beginning. What came next would force both hero and villain into a battle neither could have foreseen. The cavern pulsed with fury. The Snake King's coils twisted higher, skulls gleaming like black fire as he loomed above the poor youth. His laughter shocked the stone, a sound both mocking and desperate. Their hands clutching at their chests as if something long buried stirred within. Tears stretched down painted faces, washing away the perfection to reveal the raw humanity beneath. The snaking hissed with fury, his arrogance fracturing. You dare break what I have built for centuries? You, abu with no crown, no army, no power. The boy's voice rang out, steady as stone. I have no crown. I have no army. But I have truth. And truth cannot be bought, silenced, or buried. You think it weak, yet it is stronger than every illusion you hide behind. He raised his hand, not with a weapon, but with resolve. His words became a blade. To every soul trapped here. Hear me, you are not property, not ornaments, not shadows. You are free. Your chains are lies, and lies shatter in the light of truth. In that moment, the spell cracked. The 100 women gasped as tog air rushed into lungs long denied breath. The cavern was crammed with the voices of freed souls. The echoes of countless prisoners breaking through centuries of silence. The illusion collapsed. The jewels dulled. The gold turned to dust. The silken walls rotted into cobwebs. The Snake King staggered back, his joys convulsing, his confidence trembling. No! Impossible! You cannot undo me. I am eternal. His vows wavered between command and desperation. But the cavern no longer obeyed him. The brides he once paraded now stared at him not with hollow eyes but with burning fury. Their gazes no longer slaves but witnesses of his fall. The bull stood firm, his vows the final strike. You built your throne on lies. And every lie, no matter how dazzling, must one day collapse before the truth. The cavern roared as though the earth itself confirmed his words. Lightning split the shadows. The Snake King's skulls dulled, his body trembling as fire seeped into his own proud eyes. For the first time in his reign, he felt small, not because his power was stripped, but because someone had finally refused to bow. And the crowd, those freed souls, the women whose chains had shattered, rose in a chorus not of worship but of liberation. Their cries of freedom shocked the walls. Their tears became rivers that washed away the last fragments of illusion. The Snake King's roar turned to a broken hiss. His confidence, once his greatest weapon, crumbled into dust. But the battle was not yet over. For the truth had broken his illusions. The narrator whispers, but the war for freedom was only beginning. And the wrath of a wounded king is the most dangerous wrath of all. The cavern had fallen silent after the roar. Dust swirled where gold had trembled, jewels shattered, and illusions dissolved into nothing more than shadows. The women, unholy brides, now stood as themselves, free, trembling, alive. Their cries of liberation still echoed like thunder when the bow finally stepped out of the cave. At first, the jungle held its breath, as though nature itself did not dare believe what had happened. But whispers began to stir, chariot by the wind, chariot by the freed souls who hurried home. The poor boo, he stood against the Snake King. He spoke the truth, and the kingdom of lies collapsed. He freed the women. He broke the curse. The whisper spread from hood to hood, virepit to virepit, until whole villages stirred with awe. Farmers put down their plows to listen. Mothers hushed their children, retelling every detail as if it were scripture. Storytellers began to carve the tale into memory, their voices rising in marketplaces. Once mocked as nothing, he faced the serpent tyrant. He rejected gold, he rejected false beauty, and with truth, he shattered illusions. By nightfall, the story had leapt from village to village, traveling farther than footsteps could walk. Elders who once doubted the boy's word now spoke of him with reverence. Children whispered his name before sleep, their imaginations alleged with visions of standing tall against monsters. And in every home, a quiet fire was lit, the fire of Chourage. Soon the ripple turned into a wave. Men and women who had long bowed to lesser tyrants, the greedy landlord, the corrupt headman, the arrogant noble, felt something stir in their chests. If a poor, hungry youth could stand before the Snake King and refuse to kneel, Then why cholen tete? If truth could shatter centuries of illusions, then why must they remain silent in the face of injustice? Gecourage spread like sparks in dry grass. In one village, workers refused unfair taxes. In another, a widow spoke out against a lord who had stolen her land. Each act was small, but together they formed a that rulers could not ignore. And with every retelling, the Bues defiance became a legend, not merely a story of survival, but a parable of power. Dignity was greater than wealth, truth greater than fear. Soon even the language of the people shifted. Whenever a politician promised too much, or a leader flaunted hollow grandeur, villagers laughed and sighed. Behold, another 100 brides. The prase became a dagger of satire, a shorthand for false promises that glitter but enslave. Children giggled when they heard it. Adults muttered it bitterly at markets. And secretly, even scholars began to record it as the birth of a new proverb. Do not be fooled by 100 brides, they would say, for they may be nothing but illusions. This cultural spark turned into a firestorm. It became impossible for tyrants to flaunt wealth or parade empty promises without being mocked. Their illusions tracked beneath the weight of comparison. Truth had become contagious, and it spread faster than lies. Meanwhile, the sneaking's downfall was retold with embellishment and away. Some said the Bues word split the sky with lightning. Others swore the freedwomen themselves had risen like warriors to tear down the illusions. And though the tales blurred, the heart of the story remained intact. A powerless youth, mocked and despised, had started power in the face and won, not with armies, but with honesty. The world itself seemed to lean toward change. Travelers chariot the tale to distant lands. Merchants repeated it in bustling markets. Even minstrels began waving songs, their choruses ringing with defiance. Truth over tyranny, dignity over chains. And for Tebu himself, though he had not so good glory, his name became a banner others lifted. Where once he was invisible, now he was the mirror in which others sallallahu alaihi wasallam their own hidden strength. His struggle had become everyone's struggle. His victory, everyone's hope. The sneaking, once a figure of terror, was reduced to a cautionary tale. A symbol of arrogance trembling before humility, of corruption undone by Abu who refused to kill. Parents no longer threatened their children with the serpent's name. Instead, they warned rulers, rule with truth, or end like the sneaking. Yet amidst the celebration, a shadow lingered. For though illusions had been broken, and though whispers of freedom spread like wildfire, the echo of the Snake King's rage still reverberated in the darkness. His defeat had shaken the kingdom, but it had not ended the struggle. And so, as villagers cheered, as storytellers glorified, as Chourage rose in a wave across the land, one question remained. If Abu could bring down a tyrant, they whispered, what storm will rise when the tyrant strikes back? The story was not finished. The freedom was not complete. But the seed had been planted, and no force of arrogance could unmake what truth had awakened. The Buddha did not leave the cavern in chains. He did not live draped in silks, flanked by 100 women as the Snake King had promised. No. He walked out alone, barefoot, clothed in nothing but his own dignity. And yet, the world sallallahu alaihi wasallam him differently now. Not as a beggar, not as the mocked son of a forgotten village, but as the liberator who broke an empire of illusions. Behind him, the kingdom of serpents crumbled into dust. What had once seemed eternal was revealed as hollow. Gold had turned to ink, jewels to pebbles, beauty to chains that snapped in the light of truth. The women he had freed wept tears of relief, their humanity restored, their virtues no longer silenced. They were not his brides. They were themselves again. And in their eyes, he was no suitor, no owner, no master. He was a brother, a friend, a beacon who had reminded them of who they truly were. As he stepped into the dialogue, Tebu lifted his head toward the sky. The sun blazed down, unfiltered by illusions, its warmth pure and undeniable. In that light, his words carried, not only to those beside him but to the generations yet to come. Power built on lies is dust, he sighed. Temptation fades, but dignity endures. Wealth enslaves if it costs you your soul. But truth is the treasure no tyrant can steal. The villagers gathered, their sword, their hearts swelling with recognition. They Shallallahu Alaihi Wasallam not just his victory, but their own reflection in it. For if a poor, hungry youth could withstand the most dazzling temptations, then what excuse did they have to bow before corruption? If one who owned nothing could stand taller than a king, then perhaps they, too, chariot that same unshakable dignity within them. And so his story became more than a tale of survival. It was a mirror held to every listener. The poor Shallallahu Alaihi Wasallam proved that they were not powerless. The mocked and humiliated Shallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that shame could be turned into strength. Even the comfortable felt a stirring reminder that dignity is not measured by wealth, nor truth by titles, nor freedom by gifts handed down from rulers. His life, onje dismissed as worthless, had become a testament. Even the smallest vows, when it speaks truth, can topple empires of the Ceit. The people whispered, he refused the breedes, he refused the gold, but he won something greater. Freedom for the enslaved, and honor for himself. And in their whispers lay the seed of revolution. Not of violence, but of courage. Snake King's downfall became a parable. Corruption cannot enslave truth. Lies may bind, illusions may dazzle. But in the end, they collapse before the simple power of one soul that refuses to bow. And so the boy's name life not as a king or conqueror, but as something far greater. He became the story every child learned by Virelig. The warning every elder gave to the proud. The hope every oppressed heart chariot in silence. Even the poorest can carry dignity unshakable. Even the weakest can speak truth unbreakable. And even the most dazzling illusion will tremble before the light of freedom. In this, his journey found its true meaning. He had not entered the Snake Kingdom to claim power, but to reveal it for what it was. A hollow throne trembling before truth. And though he left with empty hands, he carried a treasure more precious than any jewel. An eternal reminder that no tyrant, no matter how mighty, can enslave the spirit that refuses to kneel. And so the tale closed not in despair, but in rising song. For the boy's victory was not his alone. It belonged to all who heard it, all who believed it, all who dared to whisper, if he could stand, then so can he. They called him Tebu who was forced to marry 100 women. But the truth of his journey revealed something far greater than the shock of that command. He exposed the greatest illusion of all. That power without dignity is nothing but dust. Snake King's wealth, beauty, and temptations seemed unstoppable. Yet they shattered before the strength of one poor soul who refused to bow. This story, wild and unreal as it may seem, is not meant to be taken as mere fantasy. It is an allegory, a mirror reflecting the battles we fight every day. We all know the snake kings of our world. Rulers who enslave, leaders who tempt, voices who mock other weakness and try to bind us with illusions. And we all know Tebu, the part of ourselves that is told we are small, powerless, or unworthy, but that still carries a hidden fire no tyrant can touch. So let his tale remind you. Dignity is worth more than gold. Truth outweighs any crown. And even in poverty, the human spirit holds a power that cannot be bought. If this story moved you, if it stirred something in your chest, if it made you see yourself or your world a little differently, then I invite you to stay with us. Subscribe now, and join us every day as we expose false power, share the drama of truth, and stand together in the fight for justice, dignity, and freedom. Because the boy's story doesn't end here. It lives on in you, in us, in every voice that refuses to kneel. And together, we can make sure the illusions of our time tremble, just as his did, before the unstoppable light of truth.